Hey everybody, and welcome to Grad Student Book Reviews, where we take an academic work and we dissect its thesis and main arguments in 5 minutes or less. All right, today we're looking at The New American Militarism, How Americans Are Seduced by War by Andrew Bacevich. All right, if you need the full citation, it's down in the comments, so check that out. All right, so what's his thesis? So Bacevich contends that American militarism, or the American infatuation with the military, is in fact deeply rooted in U.S. history, even though Americans seem to think that it happened post 9/11. Bacevich says, no, it was always been there, but the post 9/11 era has seen American militarism take over all other aspects of foreign policy. So he sees that as the problem. And so what does he build his argument off of? Really, he starts with Vietnam, or at least the post-Vietnam era and the end of the conscription military. He says that all the problems with Vietnam, including the total civilian control over it under McNamara, created all these problems that the future generals strove to rectify, right? Specifically, Colin Powell and the Weinberger-Powell doctrine, right? These guys were just out to revalidate the military. That's what they had their entire plan based off of. There was no long-term military strategy necessarily. It was just a way to revalidate the force, and they got that revalidation in Gulf War I. All right, Gulf War I went very well for a war. Okay, really, what this instituted was a policy of coercive diplomacy. Right, you do this, or we're going to send in the military. It may have worked under Colin Powell, but it is not a great strategy according to Bacevich, and it did not work in Kosovo. Right, under Milosevic. Right, General Wesley Clark issued some demands, and Milosevic called his bluff, and we bombed Kosovo, right? Bacevich goes forward and says Donald Rumsfeld then kind of recreated the McNamara debacle of Vietnam and proved that the Powell Doctrine was dead, right? And that's what led to the quagmire in Iraq, in Operation Iraqi Freedom. So he kind of comes full circle with that, with American militarism. Right, he says that we kind of had this parabola going between full general control of the military and full civilian control of the military. Right. Bacevich kind of switches gears here, and then he says some of the problems stem from Hollywood and mainstream media. He says that there's this myth about the American military. Now that we don't have conscription, and you have a very small percentage of the population actually in the military, all you have for society to go off are movies like An Officer and a Gentleman, or Rambo, or Top Gun. Right? He actually cites these as the 3 most influential propaganda films that create this unrealistic vision or view of the modern military. Right? And he says that has kind of skewed what even our politicians think the military can and can't do. Right? Another major argument of his is the defense of the military by conservative Christians. He says that Christianity has embraced the military and called it a righteous defense of the oppressed out there. Specifically looking at the Israeli way of war, which is an attack first, a preemptive strike capability, which he says that George W. Bush used against Saddam Hussein. So really now he kind of concludes that right now we're waiting for World War V. He says that World War III was the Cold War, World War IV was the war for oil, or all the wars in the Middle East, and so now we're waiting for World War V. He kind of leaves it there, and he doesn't really have great conclusions. He does have 10 steps that he thinks will solve this problem. Really, they deal with bringing society and the military closer together. None of them, in my opinion, are really workable. For instance, he thinks that college campuses should be recruiting tools, which they kind of are in some areas and in some cases, but really he thinks that they should be more like scouting combines, I guess, where ROTC looks for potential officer candidates, they select them, train them up in ROTC, and then send them to a service academy for 1 year so that everybody, all officers, have both ROTC and service academy training. It's not really realistic, right? So even though he has a good argument throughout, he doesn't really leave it in a place. There's no way forward, in other words. Okay, his book leaves the reader really with the impression that there's no legitimate fix. Okay, Otherwise, I like Bacevich. I like his works. Um, I think it is a good read, and it's a good way to look at the current state of military affairs. So if you're a military historian, American historian, go ahead and check it out. Otherwise, leave some comments, and I'll talk to you later.